Hello, my name is Marissa, and I have a new life in Christ. I am recovering from the sins of self-protection, anxiety, people-pleasing, and the lust of the flesh. I grew up in church my whole life. I'm a fifth-generation pastor's kid, so it seemed like everyone in my family was either in ministry or a pastor. My dad was a pastor, so we were there anytime the church doors were open. We had a program called Missionette at the church where I grew up. I was an honor Rainbow, Daisy, Prim, and Star. I went through the programs, learned all the Bible stories, and rarely missed a Sunday or a Wednesday. I vaguely remember a moment when I was around the age of 4 when I sat in my mom's lap after Rainbows and told her I wanted to ask Jesus into my life because I was scared of hell. But that was about the extent of my understanding. I ended up getting baptized around the age of 10, but that was more out of knowing that was something I should do instead of displaying how my life had been changed by Christ. For most of my life, I went through the motions and tried to do the right things, and I did a great job at that. Everything was about what could be seen on the outside, so people-pleasing became something I was familiar with at a young age. What I did, what I wore, what people could and couldn't know was all dictated by how it could be perceived by others. Sharing struggles or sin was not something I saw modeled growing up. In fact, I saw the opposite, so much so that I really thought our family was as close to perfect as I could get. And when I heard of other families struggling, I couldn't understand it or even fathom how that happens. I thought it wasn't fair that some people didn't have a peaceful home like I did, or so I thought. I'd never seen my parents fight, really, except for a bicker here and there about a car seat not being in the right place or being late to something. That all changed quickly at the age of 17. I remember it like it was yesterday. My parents called my little brother and me together for a family meeting in the living room. The only family meetings we were accustomed to were the occasional devotionals together or movie nights. This meeting was different, though. This one flipped my world upside down. As they sat there, they expressed they were getting divorced, and I remember sitting there in shock, crying. Not my family. This doesn't happen in our family. That was the first day I remember hearing my parents fight. It wasn't long after that I witnessed both of my parents living a lifestyle completely different than the one they had raised me. Everything I had seen and believed up until this point started going out the window. At this point in my life, I was already kind of at a fork in the road, teeter-tottering between church friends and school life. I had a group of friends at school that I had grown closer to, and they were in the party scene, and I was drawn to that. I wanted people to like me. I had never seen a drop of alcohol in my house growing up, and it wasn't something my parents talked about, unless they were saying it was a sin, or if it was being addressed at my church growing up as strong grape juice. So the closer I got to those friends, the more involved in partying I got, and the more I was lying and sneaking out and choosing a life of promiscuity. My junior and senior years of high school were rough, to say the least. I had pushed away my closest church friends, my parents were going through their own difficult seasons of life, and I didn't have the emotional capacity for my brother. They didn't have the emotional capacity for my brother and me, and I truly felt like I had no one and nothing. I went from relationship to relationship, searching for love and identity and purpose. I have an older brother that I met when I was 10, after finding out that my mom had had him at a young age and given him up for adoption. He was 8 years older than me, and he was also a pastor. He was someone I saw as safe. I thought he was so cool. Everyone liked him, and I wanted to be just like him. He seemed to live this perfectly balanced double life, if there was such a thing. Instead of coming alongside me in the season of life and pushing me to the Lord, he encouraged the lifestyle I was living. I drank with him nearly every time I went to visit him. He encouraged the promiscuous lifestyle I had been living, and he introduced me to porn. It was a toxic relationship that felt normal because of how comfortable the dysfunction had become. I consistently continued in this lifestyle until the summer before my junior year of college. I had been attending a Christian university in hopes of making my family proud, but also because I wanted something different for my life, and I thought this would be the place. Although I was striving to make better choices, I had not fully surrendered my life to Jesus yet. The summer of 2015 was the summer that changed my life forever. I went to a campus ministry event in June of 2015, and that is when I met Tashawn Avery. He radiated Jesus. He was confident, he was funny, and he had surrounded himself with true community. He was everything that I had ever dreamed of, but nothing that I thought I deserved. That was the day in person that Jesus used to radically change my life. I found myself back at a fork in the road, and this time I wanted something different. I could either continue in the lifestyle of dysfunction that I had grown so familiar and comfortable with, or I could chase after something different. Tashawn and I started dating that summer and got married the next summer. I had disclosed just enough of my past to where he knew enough, but out of fear, I chose to hide everything else. I was scared to be fully known out of fear that I wouldn't be fully loved. So I hid, stuffed, ran, and lied to try to bury my past from him, putting up walls between myself and the Lord, my husband, my family, and my friends. Marriage was hard, to say the least. Tashawn and I would have not called each other best friends when we got married, and on some days it felt like we were strangers. We had a difficult time navigating my past, and the way that we would talk to each other was horrible. On top of the difficulties that we were navigating in marriage, we lost his mom to suicide 4 months after getting married. Then a few months after that, we lost my grandma, who was like a mom to me. A year after that, we lost my great-grandma, who was one of my greatest champions. And then the year after that, we lost T's grandpa. It seemed like it was hit after hit after hit. It truly seemed like it was never going to get better. And in the mix of all of that, I was trying to navigate dysfunctional relationships in my family, all while trying to keep things from my past hidden, which was quite the balancing act. I was trying to control everything, telling my parents, make sure you don't bring this up with T, all while telling T, no, I'm not talking to my parents about issues we're having. So in one breath, I was talking negatively about our marriage and creating T to be the enemy, while in another breath, I was communicating with T the frustrations I felt towards my family. I had put myself in a no-win situation, pitting my husband against my family and my family against my husband, and that seemed impossible to get out of. My anxiety was at an all-time high, and I felt stuck in the cycle I had created. I started Region for the first time in July of 2021. I thought I was ready to face the dysfunction in my life. I made it through steps 1 through 3 and was grinding through it, and then inventory hit. To say I felt like I got hit by a bus is an understatement. I saw all the different categories and all that it was asking me to recall, and I knew that I couldn't do it and I wouldn't. I had tried too hard for too long to keep everything concealed, and I wasn't about to let Region ruin all my hard work to keep my marriage afloat. So I started coming up with every excuse in the book. What I really need is more time with my community, not another book to work through. If I keep going on Mondays, then I'll always miss the women's gathering at church. When I hang out with my friends, I feel a lot better. I don't need Region. And so I slowly talked myself out of going and reached out to my leader, Tori, at the time and dropped out. But Jesus never stopped pursuing me. The end of 2022 into the beginning of 23 was a challenging and convicting season. The Lord was really pressing in on my heart through multiple different people. I had been doing a Bible reading plan on dangerous prayers that prompted me to pray to reveal any sin in my life. My husband was preaching infusion in a series called It's Personal, about taking back enemy ground. At my Bible study, the woman teaching said, the right time to say yes to God is always now. And then to put the icing on the cake, Dr. Jeff Cox at the Leadership Summit said, everyone needs someone that knows everything about you. I couldn't take it anymore. The Lord had made it abundantly clear that I could not continue living on in hiding. So by the Lord's strength, I started on a journey of being fully known, and by the Lord's grace, I was met with being fully loved. For the first time in my life, I was living fully surrendered to Jesus and beginning to believe the things he says about me. I started to truly understand that Jesus is the only one I will stand before one day. I had been so desperate to be loved by my husband and to be seen in a certain way that I had been completely blind to the fact that I was not living my life for Jesus. I was living for people. In April of 2023, I got baptized again. But this time it wasn't for people. This time it was to signify that I was fully surrendered to Jesus and as I desire to live a life that is authentic and pleasing to him. At the church I grew up in, getting rebaptized would have been a point of shame. But I've never felt as safe or as loved as I have an abundant life. Pastor Phil told me he was proud of me, and to hear that from our lead pastor meant a lot considering how I grew up. To me, it showed that I really am more than a pastor's wife in the eyes of our church. I am a child of God first and foremost over everything else, and to know that I'm at a church that prioritizes my personal relationship with Jesus is something I had never experienced. Over and over again, the Lord has continued to reveal his faithfulness through my obedience. The same month I got baptized, I also started Region again. This time I knew that by the Lord's strength, I could get through it. As a lot of you know, this program is not for the faint of heart. It takes intentional hard work, but it is so worth it. I'm so thankful for the group of women that I was surrounded by for months and for my leaders who guided me through the process. I graduated in January of this year and walked away with more tools and freedom. So for all of you who are in the process, don't quit. This past year and a half has been one of the most difficult and freeing years of my life. I'm so thankful that Jesus never stopped pursuing me. I can look back on those years of my life and see how he was always pursuing me. He never stopped. I can look back on my entire life and see the different ways that he protected me in seasons when I wanted nothing to do with him. He's been so gracious to me in times when I made people God instead of him. Faithful when I didn't trust that he cared about me. Patient when I was doing everything in my power to do the opposite of what he called me to. Gentle when all I could do was scream. He has been gracious, merciful, a provider, a healer, a deliverer, a chain breaker, a miracle worker, a restorer, and on and on and on. Without Jesus, there would be no freedom, healing, or restoration. Because of Jesus, my husband and I have a marriage that is thriving. I have friends who truly know me and love me. The relationships between my family and me are healthy and on track, and I get to live a life of freedom. As I'm writing my testimony, a worship song popped in my head, and I wanted to leave you with a verse from it. Over the mountains and the sea, your river runs with love for me. And I will open up my heart and let the healer set me free. I'm happy to be in the truth, and I will daily lift my hands, for I will always sing of when your love came down. I could sing of your love forever. Thank you.